Hello, everyone. My name is Salih, and I come from Berlin. And it's really nice to be in Istanbul, in my home country. It's really nice to meet amazing people in this community. Today, I'm going to explain you how you can add Flutter to your existing applications. But before I do that, let me explain who I am and why I think that I can actually teach you this. So I've been developing Flutter applications since the alpha stages, like latest alpha stages, and I'm a Flutter and Dart GDE. I have used Flutter in existing apps and also in production applications. And I've been working at Onefootball as Android engineer. Before that, I was in an agency, and also like in both platforms, I had a chance to play around with Flutter and experience some different stuff to share with the community. By saying community, of course, I do some stuff to share my knowledge, not just here, also in Berlin. I am a co-organizer of the Flutter Berlin meetup, and I'm also the Flutter Turkey creator. Like Flutter Turkey is the community that we have gathered together with some volunteers, that we translate some documentation to Turkish, and also we do events in different cities, like not just Istanbul, Ankara. We are going to like different places like Bursa, Şanlıurfa, Antalya, and so on. So I will start with the classic question: what is Flutter? Has everyone heard about Flutter so far? Like, who hasn't heard about it? Can you raise your hand? Okay, it's like really few. Like, if we started, it's basically the Google's application development SDK. So it just helps you to write the code once, and you can deploy it to the multiple places. Not just mobile, you can also deploy it to web and desktop as well. It uses the language Dart, which is a reactive language that you can use to implement beautiful applications with Flutter. And it is a modern language, so you can actually see the resemblance with different languages like Kotlin, Java, and so on. I know Flutter is beautiful, and it's really hype, but I'm not going to give you the introduction to the Flutter, because we all know that when you see something new, you all want to try it, but not all of us has this chance. What we need is, we need to learn how we can use the new technology to be able to implement into this code base that we already have. So for this purpose, Flutter team created something called add-to-app functionality. What is add-to-app functionality? So what it does is it provides you a model template, so you can add it to your either Android or iOS application, and it gives you some sort of setups that we are going to be learning in the following slides. And you can actually use the behavior within your application and port yourself to the Flutter part. So basically, it is helping you to put Flutter, put the use case that you want to have into your existing application. And what you can do with it is limitless. You can either have part of your app as Flutter, or if you want, you can rewrite your application partially module by module by following this set of steps. So let's continue. This is an open source project. It's one of the projects that Flutter team is working on. Everything is open, every task is there. So you can see your risks, you can see what you want to do, and what are ready, what are not ready, what are the risks, and so on. So when you do your risk calculation as a developer, when you do this, you can actually see it. There are obviously some things that you need to consider that we are going to be also talking about later on. So first, let's talk about how you can add it to the Android applications. Like, how many of you are Android applications here? Can you raise your hand? And you are not Android applications, but Android developers, obviously. But maybe you are. Anyway, so I'm going to be starting with this because me, as a background, I'm an Android developer as well. I've been doing it for like 5 years now. And I want to show you that one first so you can grasp it easier. So when you have Flutter applications, you have one command to create a project, which is Flutter create. And you can pick the language by using I for iOS and A for Android, and you can just write the name of the language, and you can just create your project. What we are doing here as a different thing is adding the module keyword here. Module keyword here will help you to create a module, Android module actually, to put inside your Android application. So you can define it as an Android module, and you can use it within your application directly. So when you see, if you see this one, what it does is it creates a module and uses Swift for iOS and Kotlin for Android, and you're just defining your package name. I defined as com.onefootball because I'm going to be using it to add it to our ongoing project in Onefootball. And I just named the module as information page because in my scenario, I decided to use it to give a user an information page, a feedback page that they can use and send information back to us. So after we created this, after we run this command in our command line, what we need to do is we need to prepare our application to handle the files that we have within our module. So what we are doing here is, first of all, we have a special Groovy file inside our module that is going to be handling the to identify the necessary files within our Flutter module. So every module that you're going to be creating will have something called include flutter.groovy. And this file will be handling the identifying part for your module. So for this one, in your application Gradle file, you need to add first, like if you have it, it's good. If you don't have it, set binding, new binding, Gradle this. Then you need to evaluate the file with the directory that you have. And if it's in your project or if it's somewhere else, it's totally up to you. You just need to provide the file's location. But for the sake of simplicity, I would suggest to use it within your Android application, so it would be easier to control, and it would be easier to handle the changes. So after you add this and run the Gradle, it would tell you that, OK, now you are ready. You can use this as a library, as a Gradle module within your application. So what you can do here is you can just say, OK, implementation, project, and inside your project, you need to say :Flutter. And this would say that, OK, inside your module, you have a Flutter module that you can use. And when you define this, and after you run the Gradle build before, your project will be ready to identify what Flutter is in this case. And after that, if you run it, you run your Gradle file one more time, your project will be ready to handle the Flutter module changes, or you can use the Flutter module-related classes or other specifications. But let's put it this way. A Flutter application is actually an application wrapped around an Android application. So as a wrapper, as a frame, you have a Flutter application. And Flutter's main entry point here is activity for us. So if you want to use this activity, if you want to call this activity and call the main entry point, so this is the Onefootball application. And I just navigate myself within the app, and I said, OK, add privacy settings. And you will see the screen. Now I will explain why we needed to wait. As you see, it starts, we click, but it takes some time to bring up the view. So in Flutter, we have something called Flutter Engine. Flutter Engine is basically our base for everything, like animations, core UI stuff, and so on. And with the straightforward engine logic, it needs to warm up. So when you create the application, if you don't warm up your engine, it will not be ready to show something out. So what you need to do here is, to prevent this long white screen, you need to warm up your engine. For that, it's pretty straightforward. You need to create an engine object and put it inside your application. And when you do that, it will be able to be ready to be shown exactly as it is. In iOS, it's a bit different, but we will go back to that soon. So I showed you the way to edit with command line because I want you to understand how this works in the background. obviously, Flutter team is known with its own also tooling and other stuff as well. So tooling is important, and it needs to help us to do our job. And now you understand how it works. Now you understand actually when you write this module, what it does and how it brings up the module. So what we're doing here is, we can see that in Android Studio after 3.6, we can add Flutter by using Android Studio as a module. So for that, what we need to do is we can just say new module from Android Studio itself. And when you go to the new module page, you can see two options. Flutter module, which helps us to create the Flutter module itself, or there's an import Flutter module option, which, for example, you decided to do everything with command line, but you want to add this Flutter module to a project, so you can do it by using import Flutter module option. And in this case, if you do Flutter module and go and create your module, it's going to be doing everything that you have done before directly for you out of the box with the Android Studio 3.6. So we have created everything. It's perfect, and we have done a lot of development, and now we have something big. But we need to share this with other people as well. So we can do it with two ways. The first way is using Flutter module as AAR. What is the advantage of this? The advantage of this is when you have everything in AAR, you can actually share it by using providers or as a local library, and you would have consistency within the teams. So you can create your AAR file like as an Android archive file, and you can just like provide it to your teammates or other people. And after you do all this stuff, what you need to do is you can just say that, okay, take this file, use it in your project. And for doing this, what we need to do is, first we need to go and navigate ourselves to the modules folder from the command line. Right now, there is only command line support for this. And after that, you just need to write one command here, which is flutter build AAR. And this command will create an AAR file for you. But after you create the AAR file, what should you do, right? For using it locally, what you can do is you can say that, okay, this is a local repository for me. And when you do this, by the way, when you do it as Flutter build AAR, it will directly create it as in the release mode. So if you want to do and create it as debug mode, what you need to do is Flutter build AAR --debug. Nothing different, only besides the last part. But we created as release mode. So what it does is first, it created us an AAR file. What we need to do is first, we need to show our local, somehow, Maven repository to our project. And secondly, we need to say, OK, we have this file, this AAR file, and I want to use this. For this one, you need to have your organization or package name in the beginning. And after that, the name of the module. And Flutter release is a standard name. So if it's Flutter release, it will be Flutter release. If it's debug, it will be Flutter debug. And last but not least, it will be the version number of it. And when you add this stuff to your application's Gradle file, it will be ready to use. So I gathered like more or less like frequently asked questions about Earth2 app for Android. So like first one is, can I call Flutter code from Kotlin Java code? The answer is yes. So we have already seen that you can actually call an activity from the Java code before. But what you can do is also, you can change the specifications of the call or directly connect yourself to the Flutter itself and change some stuff. And actually, you can prepare your code to be able to ready to handle some stuff. So long story short, you can do it. It's exactly the way that I showed. There is even a guide for this. I put the link here. So for going forward, I will share the slides later on, so you can check it out. The second thing is, can I call a certain Flutter page with a certain route? Again, the answer is yes, but let me explain what a route is. So in Flutter, you can do navigation in different types, but one of them is using the routes. Like, you can have a specific route for the specific location, and you can use it actually to be able to route yourself, like direct yourself within your application. But when you do that, it also brings you some flexibility around the navigation, and it is nice. And sometimes it helps us with our direct deep linking behavior to a certain page. And for doing this, what you need to do is you can use something called intent builder. And this intent builder coming from Flutter activity is basically you can change some specifications about how you call a Flutter intent. For example, you can have an initial route, which will be some page on your Flutter activity, on your Flutter application, and it will directly take you to that page, and you would be able to start from that page and show it to your users. And last question is, okay, we already explained this one. I think I clicked on the wrong one. Yeah, perfect. Can I use the hot reload and hot restart in my application? Because as we all know, one of the biggest advantages of Flutter is hot reload and hot restart. Yes, you can use it, but obviously for using that, you need to be inside the Flutter part of your application. So you can't use it in Android application itself. So what you need to do is, after you run your application, you can run a command flutter attach. And it will find the device that you have for debugging or testing or whatever it is whatever the usage is. And it will wait for it to go to the Flutter page itself. So it will wait a bit. And when you land onto the page for Flutter, it will directly attach itself to the debugger and it will show you this message. It will say, OK, you're ready with it now. You can show it. You can do the hot reload, hot restart, and so on. One downside about it is not supported yet from any IDE, so you need to do it from the command line. So this also shows a really important thing. You can do anything right now by simply attaching your debugger to the ongoing Flutter module. And for example, it provides us a local URL that we can use to do some stuff with developer tools coming out of the box with Flutter SDK itself. So you can do actually some performance checks or some simple debuggings and so on. So far we have done the Android part. I know it looks easy, and believe me, it is that way. Obviously, there will be some downsides that I'm going to be explaining later on, but Android part is actually pretty straightforward as it's shown. With the iOS part, what we are going to do is nothing different here so far. We are going to be creating the iOS module or Flutter module as we have created before. After we created this, what we need to do is we need to check our file system. Because one thing that we need to keep in mind is when you create the Flutter module, it shouldn't be inside your application. So in my case here right now, OpenFlutter is the name of my folder which holds my iOS application. And exactly in the same level as it is, I have my Flutter package information page. As I said, it shouldn't be inside of it or outside of it. They should be in the same level. So after we are sure that our module is exactly in the same level as my project, let's move on. So we need to add Flutter to our ongoing iOS project by using pod file. So CocoaPods is the file system detecting system, file system manager from iOS. How many are you are iOS developers? OK, 0 or 1. Hi. And too. Okay, hi to you as well. So, like, this helps us to provide some libraries within our application. So what we are doing here is we will treat our Flutter module as our Flutter library, as we did in Android as well. So for pod file, what we are doing is first, we are providing, so inside our pod file, we are providing a path to our module. So in my case, it was like users/Muhammed Salih Güler -desktop information page. Like best place to put your module is your desktop. So that's what I did. So afterwards, what I'm doing here is, okay, I have the path to be able to use it again afterwards that I'm going to show you. But what I'm doing next is I have a file inside my iOS folder within my module. I think it was a Ruby file. If I'm wrong, sorry about that. I will fix it later on. But I think it was a Ruby file. So what it does is it loads that file to me. So I can use it when I create my application to load the libraries. Afterwards, when you run it, it will be able to actually load everything, like load your module. It will also bring up the Flutter module out of the box for you by downloading it. It will also bring up, for example, you can have multiple packages within your Flutter project, and maybe you would like to use some of them only, and you can actually provide this information by the Flutter plugin registry system, and it will bring up to you as well. So you will be directly using it by naming the name of the Flutter package itself. So when you run this code, when you run this pod file, it will do everything for you. So let's continue. We have the library now, but we need to connect it to our application. So I don't have a lot of iOS experience, so what I did is I took my example and take it to one of my iOS engineers in Onefootball, and I told him to explain it to me. So if something is wrong, let's blame him, not me. So first of all, what we are doing as a change is we are extending Flutter app delegate instead of the regular app delegate in our app delegate class. So this will bring us some helper methods and helper systems so we can actually prepare our application to be able to ready when it's time to call Flutter part. So as you remember, I told that we had something called Flutter Engine. And Flutter Engine is a special class that is handling all the specific stuff like animation, views, and so on, and it needs to be ready. So what I'm doing here is, before in Android, I did a mistake and I didn't show it, but I didn't prepare it. But now I have learned from my mistake and I say, okay, I'm going to make it ready. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating a Flutter Engine object when the application is first called. And when the Flutter Engine is created and it is ready, I tell it to run, so it will be ready when it's time for it to be called. And next, what I do is I am starting the generated plugin register, which is the tool that I told that we can use directly for the plugins, not the whole module itself. After we add this and create the engine, we will be fine. We will be ready. So in our application, not here. Oh, OK. I'm going backwards again. Cool. So in our application, how to open the page is, again, what we need to do is we need to retrieve the Flutter engine. It's a nullable type, so I'm making sure that it's not null in the case that I call it. And when it's ready, and when I call it, it will directly show me the page. And only the let Flutter view controller part, the object creation, is coming from the Flutter itself. Self.present is totally out of the box from the iOS code itself. So you can see an example which is super low quality right now. So I have a button. When I click, as you see, we don't have the white screen anymore. It directly lands into the Flutter page. So all I did was add to code and use my amazing iOS skills, and I have created this one. So I will answer the same questions for iOS itself, like, because those are the main things that people ask mostly. So can I call Flutter code from Swift and Objective-C code? The answer is yes. You can do it. You can specify your View controller as you want to. But for this, for example, I needed to also have another session with the iOS engineers in my team to be able to learn it. There is no documentation about it yet. I will explain the reason for this later on. And the second thing is the same question. Can I start from the specific root? Yes, you can. What you need to do is, after you create a Flutter View controller object, you need to initialize the root by using setInitialRoot method. And after you say self.present, it will take you to the certain root. And last but not least, if you can use hot reload or hot restart, the answer is, again, yes, pretty straightforward. You need to attach your Flutter debugger to your device, and it will be waiting for it to be opened by Flutter module, and when it's opened, it will show exactly the same message and with the variables that you can use. But one more time, we don't have any ID support for this yet. So one thing that I wanted to show is debugging specific instances of Flutter. And the reason for that is Flutter supports that you can actually have multiple modules in your application. Maybe you have different modules that you want to use within your application, but there's only a problem in one of them, but you don't know. So you can actually isolate by, you can filter the ongoing modules by tagging them with some name. And at the end of the day, you can directly say that, OK, I want to debug, I want to attach to only this part of the module, only this module with this name. So what is missing from Earth2 app? Like, so far, everything looks pretty straightforward. So far, everything looks nice. But obviously, there are some downsides. The biggest downside is Earth2 app is still in preview. So it's not ready for production yet. You can use it, yes. I know some companies like Groupon or like right now Alibaba is doing the same, like doing module by module rewriting by using it. But it is still in preview. So that's why we don't have a lot of support that we need yet. But as I shared in here or showed before, you can see the ongoing downsides, and you can decide for yourself. Okay, I need to learn how to use this. Exactly, like the second part was the full ID integration to support working with the Flutter Dart code is not ready yet. So hot reload, hot restart, and so on, a lot of stuff needs to be created manually by a command line. So that's why you need to, like, you don't have the ID support in this version yet. And one thing that to keep in mind is right now there, like since it's in preview mode, there are a lot of movement going on with the class names. And like, for example, right now there's io.flutter.facade.flutter fragment, but they are replacing it with another package name and another class. And they both exist, and you shouldn't use the deprecated one. And this kind of stuff can make things harder or complicated than as it is. So it gives, since it's in preview mode, you need to be like twice careful when you do something else. And one more downside that I can say is there are still glitches in Android Studio creation. So when I create the Android Studio, it might put the Gradle commands into the wrong file or to the wrong position according to your project. This is what happened to me when I do it with Android, when I do it for Onefootball. So I needed to move some files around, not files, but commands around to be able to make it running. So also after Android Studio 3.6, there was a Dart problem if you're running your Android project and when you're trying to reach to Dart, but you can just solve it by opening your module in another IDE. So should you use it? Like, this is like 100% personal opinion. I would suggest to first do the evaluation perfect. Like, just know what you have and what you want. Check out the open issues and how much it blocks you. Like, do the real, it's a dangerous word, but let's say engineering. Like, do the calculations carefully. When you do it, and if you see that all of these stuff going on is not blocking you, you can do it freely. As I said, I'm in contact with the Groupon people. I know how they do it, and for them, it's working perfectly. I don't know the Alibaba people, but like, they are moving to Flutter more and more, so they must be happy. And like, there are small companies in Berlin, like, they are trying their best to be able to embrace this functionality and to be able to actually, if they have one app, they want to have 2 apps by rewriting only once, or like move forward with both of their apps by using the modules, or even only the beautiful UI part that you can create with Flutter. So I would say that it's ready to use if you evaluate everything and be sure about yourself, which is the case for everything else as well. So as a recap, what we have learned so far, we have learned how you can add Flutter to your Android applications, how you can add it to your iOS applications, and pros and cons on using app to each platform. OK, these are extra. So thank you very much for listening to me. Am I getting questions? OK. Yeah, we have time, so thank you very much.